Hello there, it's Helen Pollock, the Content Doc here, and I am delighted to be joined today by Denise Cowle of Denise Cowle Editorial Services.
Hello.
Hello there, how are you doing?
Really well, thank you.
Brilliant. So, if anyone doesn't know me, I'm Helen Pollock, the Content Doc, and I'm a ghostwriter and book coach for business and non-fiction books. And Denise is a proofreader and editor specialising in non-fiction books. But I'll let her tell you a bit more about what she does.
Yeah.
Denise, tell us about you and your business.
Hi, thanks Helen. Lovely to be here with you. So as you said, I'm a non-fiction editor and proofreader. So I specialise in educational or business materials, whether that's books or courses, any sort of written content for the non-fiction market. So don't come to me with your novel because that's not my wheelhouse at all. I've done this for about 9 years now. I'm an advanced professional member of the Chartered Institute for Editing and Proofreading, and I'm also their marketing director. And my work split between work for big publishing houses, educational materials, particularly English language teaching, and independent authors, whether that's books or journal articles, or as I said before, online materials and courses. So quite a variety there.
There is indeed. Oh,
Mm.
thank you. That's good to hear. Now, I wonder, I think you're going to be a great person to ask the thorny question. What is the difference between a proofreader and an editor?
That is the thorny question, because proofreaders and editors can't even agree on that themselves. There's a lot of discussion. I think it's easiest to think about in terms of the traditional publishing workflow, where copy editing comes before proofreading, and they're two distinct processes in themselves. So if you can imagine somebody's written their book and submitted it to a publishing house, and it's in a Word document, a manuscript, and they're happy with the structure and the content, the copy editor is then handed over to them and they work on it to make sure it's consistent, it's readable, it's clear and correct, and they deal with all the grammar issues and typos, basically making sure it's in perfect shape as it can be for printing and setting. Okay. Once it's gone to the designer or typesetter and is laid out the way the book should look, that's when the proofreader would then come in, and they do that final check on the book as it should be printed out to make sure that there's no additional errors being introduced during that process, to catch the things that the copy editor will have missed, because there will be things, because nobody's perfect. And also you have to think of how many things perhaps had to be done at that copy editing stage. If there's a lot of corrections going on, it is easy to miss some things. So they check all that, and they'll do things that can't be done until that stage, like page numbers, checking page numbers and headers and the table of contents and any cross references inside a book. So that's the last bit of quality assurance before a book actually goes to the printer to be printed. That's what pure proofreading is, which is a very separate step from copy editing. But of course, nowadays, with changes in workflows and publishing patterns and self-publishing, the lines are much more blurred between the two, and it might well be that an author might come to me and ask for pretty much a combination of the two, really. They might already have it laid out and they want me to do a bit more than a proofread, but it's not a full copy edit, or vice versa. They say, well, we're only going to have one round of checks on this. Can you check my Word document? And I'll just have to do as much as I can in that, because I know I won't get to see it again after it's been set out. So a lot of it depends on how an individual is planning on writing and publishing, and also on their budget as well, because not everybody can afford two separate rounds of editings and corrections. I don't know if that helps or confuses, but it's a sort of it's a flux. And so I think the important thing is to be very clear when you're approaching somebody for editing help, whether that's editing and proofreading, to be very clear about what it is you want them to do and what sort of outcome you want from it, and whether you've got other steps in your publishing process coming after them so that they know what you want.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I think that's a really good answer, Denise. So thank you very much for that. So moving on, I wanted these chats to be giving aspiring authors 3 top tips from people in other specialisms within publishing than myself. So effectively, what are the top 3 things that you wish people knew before they come to you, so that you know, to save them time, money and hassle?
Yeah, okay then. Right. Well, the first thing I'd like to tell any author out there is your editor shouldn't be the first person to read your book. Okay, and we do find this quite often, that people will come to us with a completed manuscript and say, right, I've finished it, it's ready to be edited. You're the first person to look at it, which is, it's flattering, but actually in the long run, it would be better for your book and for your pocket to have other people look at it first. And that's something that people may not be familiar with, but getting some feedback on your writing before it comes to editing, I think, is really important, because you won't realize how a reader looks at it until you actually put it to a reader, and you shouldn't wait till after it's been edited. So whether that's you know, a writers group that you might be involved with, or a trusted peers in the area that you're writing, or beta readers. Some, you know, people aren't familiar. They're people that will read your book often for free and give you some feedback on it. But all of feedback from all of these people will give you ideas on how to change and improve your book based on people who should be your target audience. And for that, I usually say, try not to use friends and family, because they can't be objective. They don't want to hurt you, and they're also not necessarily the best people to make a good judgment about it if they're not your intended readership either. So it just also helps you to understand what type of editorial support you might need to look for. So you might get great feedback on the structure, and it flows really well, but people are saying lots of your grammar's maybe, you know, needing support, or there's lots of typos, or it might be really clean, but it's maybe it feels a bit fragmented to people and it doesn't flow the way it should. So that can help you decide what sort of editing you need, and therefore where best to spend your editing budget before you actually come to pick up the phone or type an email to somebody that you think you want to edit. So by doing that and by getting that feedback, I think it helps you to focus in again on your content, revisit it, and then maybe think about, well, maybe now it's time to get an editor or proofreader, and which type of specialist you'd be best to work with. So that's
Brilliant.
tip number 1.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
really valuable. So what about tip number 2?
Okay, so tip number 2 is, don't try and make your manuscript look pretty for us as editors. And I can understand that impulse to spend a lot of time on fonts and positioning tables on pages and worrying about, you know, whether that should be bold or this should be yellow or whatever. At the editing stage, that's not necessary. We would probably strip a lot of that out anyway when we're editing. And I find this a lot when I get, for example, a manuscript in Word and it's got a lot of tables or photographs or images put in it, and they've been beautifully positioned with captions above and below. As soon as I start making changes in that, that's all going to shift. So, you know, because Word is just a law unto itself. It all moves anyway. So what an editor does is they take all these things right out and put them in separate files and just insert cues in the manuscript. So if you know that, you won't spend your time trying to get Word to behave itself, because it doesn't really ever do that. It's because it's not designed for layout. I think that's the bottom line. A Word document is not how a book is laid out. So don't make it look pretty. If you want to use word styles to help to order your manuscript, your editor will love you for that, because that's really helpful, because that is something that we would certainly, one of the first things I do is, you know, use styles to delineate headings and different types of text. But even that's not necessary. If you don't know how to do that, don't spend time trying to work out how to do it, because your editor can do it for you. But don't think your book has to look like a book when you send it to an editor, because that's not how best way to spend your time, really.
Wow, that is brilliant. I think so many people do not know that.
Yeah, it's instinctive, really. You're writing a book, you want to make it look like a book, and it will look like a book, but now's not the time to do it when you're just going into that editing stage. It's different if somebody's sending us a PDF for proofreading, then it's going to look like it should be printed. But most people who are writing a book, they're writing it in Word, and it doesn't need to look like a book at that point. In fact, it probably won't look anything like a book, and that's okay. That's fine.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2 fantastic tips already there. So what is your third and final tip for us, please?
Okay, so the final thing is, don't wait until you've finished writing your book to start looking for an editor. It's a process that you should invest time into, because that relationship with an editor is a really important one, and it is a relationship. It's not just a case of finding somebody on Google and sending them money, and it's not just a transaction, it is a relationship, and it's important that you get somebody who's the right fit, and finding somebody who's the right fit takes some time. And if you want the right person, they're not necessarily going to be available just when you send them an email. They may well have a lead time of several months before they have an opening. And if you've got a time critical print date and you want to publish to a set timeline, you need to make sure that you can schedule in your editing at a time that suits that. And your preferred editor might not be available if you leave it too late. So do your research, take time to find the right editor in the right genre, and that might involve sending people samples of your work so that they can edit it, and that gives you a feel for the sort of way that they would edit your work, because who might appear right in terms of price might not be giving you the sort of feedback that fits well with your writing style, and the only way to find that is to get a sample. So ask around, ask your friends or your colleagues who've edited before, had editing done before in a similar genre and who are happy with that. Use creditable directories, and just take your time and do your research, because it can make or break your book, really, getting the right sort of editing done.
Absolutely. I think we've probably talked about this before, Denise. Writing a book is quite a personal thing.
Yeah, it is. And handing it over to be edited is, it must make you feel very vulnerable, really, because you've sweated over this for sometimes years. People take a long time to write a book, and all of a sudden you're asking somebody to review it and make corrections and point out any flaws in it, and you need to trust the person that you're going to do that, and you don't want to feel the way you used to feel when you were in school and you handed in an English essay to be marked or something. That's not what an editorial relationship should be like, but that's often what people fear. And unfortunately, anybody can call themselves an editor, so not everyone's going to be the best fit for you, and you want somebody who's got experience in your genre and is empathetic with you and has good testimonials. Check out their website and make sure you like what people are saying about them, and then get that sample and see if does it look like something your English teacher would have sent you with lots of abrupt comments, or is it a nice, gentle, supportive relationship you're getting there, if that's what you want. some people like to be told they're wrong, but that's not for us to decide.
No, oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much, Denise. I think people are going to get an awful lot of value from those tips that you've been so kind and shared with us.
I hope so.
So I look forward to speaking to you in the near future.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, if people need a fantastic non-fiction editor, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, my website's denisecowleeditorial.com, but best way to get in touch with me is my email, denise@denisecowleeditorial.com. So yeah.
Well, I hope people will get in touch. They really ought to do.
Thank you very much. Hope so. Yeah.
Thanks again, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Helen. Bye. Bye.